The rain had just started to fall when Officer Daniel Brooks pulled into the narrow cul-de-sac on the outskirts of Portland, Oregon. His wipers moved rhythmically, but they couldn't erase the heaviness he felt in his chest. Dispatch had said it was a welfare check. An anonymous neighbor worried about a child being left alone in one of the houses. At first glance, it seemed like any quiet Thursday evening, but Officer Brooks had learned that danger often hid behind the most ordinary doors. He parked his cruiser and stepped out, boots splashing against shallow puddles. The house in question was a worn-down duplex, its porch light flickering, its paint chipped and pale. No sound came from inside, not even the television. The neighbor had been adamant. "There's a little girl, she's been alone for hours. I know her mom, and this isn't normal." Daniel's knuckles tapped the door 3 times. No response. Bueno, this time. Still nothing. After announcing himself, he turned the knob. It was unlocked. The first thing he noticed was silence. The kind that felt wrong, then the faint scent of instant noodles, and something sour. His hand hovered near his holster as he moved through the living room, passing an overturned chair and a stack of envelopes labeled urgent and final notice. And then he saw her, curled up on the couch like a kitten wearing a pink hoodie and socks with holes in them, was a little blonde girl, maybe 6 years old. She didn't scream, she didn't run, she just looked up at him with the kind of eyes that seemed older than they should be. "Hi there," Daniel said gently, crouching so he wouldn't seem threatening. "I'm Officer Brooks. Are you okay?" She nodded once, very slowly. "What's your name?" "Liar. Is your mommy home?" She looked down. She said she'd come back, but that was yesterday. And just like that, the entire case shifted. It was supposed to be a welfare check. Now it was something else, something bigger. He radioed for backup, requesting child services. As he waited, he sat across from her on the worn carpet, asking simple questions, trying to keep his tone light. What was her favorite color? What shows did she like to watch? Did she have a pet? Her answers were hesitant at first, but each word was a window into a life that had been far from easy. As she spoke, Daniel noticed a framed photo on the shelf. A woman in her 30s, arm around Lara, both smiling at some beach. There was something forced in the woman's smile, something tight and performative. Lara's, though, was genuine, carefree. An hour later, the story began to unfold. The woman, Isabel Monroe, had been arrested earlier that day for orchestrating one of the largest online investment scams in Oregon's recent history. She was accused of defrauding dozens of victims, many of them elderly, promising high returns and vanishing with their money. Millions of dollars had been lost. Daniel had heard of the case. Everyone in the department had. But no one had mentioned a daughter. And now, here she was. Why would a woman so deeply involved in deception and financial crime raise a child completely off the grid, hidden from courts, paperwork, and even school records? It was the first of many questions that would haunt Daniel in the weeks to come. Child Protective Services arrived, but Lara clung to Daniel's arm when they tried to escort her out. "Can you come with me?" she asked, eyes wide. The social worker hesitated. Daniel had seen this before, kids forming attachments during crisis, but something about this felt different. It wasn't just about comfort, there was trust. "I'll follow behind in my car," he offered, just to help her feel safe. Permission was granted. During the ride, he couldn't stop thinking about her. He'd responded to dozens of calls involving children over his 18 years as an officer, but this one stuck to his ribs. Maybe it was the way she never once cried. Maybe it was how she watched everything with quiet calculation. Or maybe it was because she reminded him of his own daughter, Emma, who would have been about Lara's age now, if the accident hadn't taken her and her mother 6 years ago. He shook the thought from his head. This wasn't about him. Or was it? When they arrived at the temporary shelter, Laura looked up at him before stepping out of the car. "You'll come back, right?" He nodded. "I promise." But he wasn't sure why he said it. That night he couldn't sleep. The rain had stopped, but the storm inside his mind raged on. He pulled up the case file on Isabel Monroe. Her charges, her timeline, her prior aliases. She was a master manipulator. No record of Laura's birth. No known family. It was as if the girl didn't officially exist. Which begged the question, who was protecting whom? Why hide her? And why did Laura seem so aware of things no child her age should know? Daniel closed the file and stared at the ceiling. There are moments in life when logic gives way to something deeper, a pull, a whisper that says this one matters. He didn't know why, but he felt it in his bones. This wasn't going to be just another case. The next morning, he brought coffee to the shelter staff and asked if he could see Laura before his shift. They agreed. She was in a playroom, sitting cross-legged with crayons but not drawing. "Hey," he said, kneeling beside her.
"Hi," she said, not looking up.
"I brought you something." From his pocket, he pulled a tiny police badge keychain. "I had one just like this when I was your age." She took it, turning it over in her palm. "You said you'd come back," she murmured. "I always keep my promises." For the first time since he met her, Lara smiled. It wasn't wide, it wasn't long, but it was real. And something inside Daniel shifted. He didn't know it yet, but that moment would change everything. The road ahead would be filled with hearings, background checks, psychological evaluations, and a past that Lara had yet to reveal, but this was where it began. With a rain-soaked Thursday, a pink hoodie, and a girl who asked for nothing more than someone to come back, someone who wouldn't leave, not this time. And for the first time in years, Daniel felt something stir beneath the weight he always carried on the job. A sense of purpose that was deeply personal, the kind of purpose that doesn't come with a badge or a paycheck, the kind that changes a man. He looked at Lara again through the observation window before leaving the shelter. "I'll see you tomorrow," he whispered. She couldn't hear him, but somehow he knew she felt it. This was only the beginning. The next few days unfolded like a slow unraveling thread. Daniel visited Lara every morning before his shift and returned in the evening if he could. Each time she was waiting, sometimes near the window, sometimes by the door, but always with the same quiet hope in her eyes. The shelter staff began to notice. "She doesn't talk much," one of the caregivers told him, "except when you're here, then she lights up." He didn't know what to say to that. Something about it made him feel honored and guilty at the same time.
On the fourth day, he brought her a coloring book. It was a simple gesture, but when he handed it to her, she held it like it was the most valuable thing she'd ever owned.
"You like animals?" he asked, noticing she colored only the dogs and cats. She nodded. "I want a dog one day. A big one. But Mommy said we couldn't have pets because it draws attention." Daniel paused. Attention from who? Lara shrugged. "People, neighbors, school." It hit him again. This wasn't just a neglected child. This was a child raised to hide, to stay invisible. And that raised another question. What kind of mother instills that level of fear in a 6-year-old? Back at the station, Daniel started digging deeper into Isabel Monroe's past. The evidence was overwhelming. Fraud, wire transfers, offshore accounts, fake identities, but nothing in the reports mentioned a daughter, no school enrollment, no medical records, no birth certificate, not even a pediatrician visit logged under her name. He requested a warrant to access Isabel's sealed records and was granted limited access due to his involvement in Lara's welfare check. It turned out Isabel had used at least 6 aliases over the last decade. In 3 of those identities, there were hints, photos, social media posts, purchases that suggested Lara had been with her the whole time. No one had been looking for the girl because, technically, she didn't exist. And now that Isabel was in federal custody, awaiting trial, she wasn't talking to anyone, not even to her court-appointed attorney. That meant whatever truths Laura carried, they were buried inside her tiny, guarded heart. That weekend, Daniel brought her a stuffed husky with a blue collar. She hugged it tight the moment she saw it. "What's his name?" he asked. "Juno," she said without hesitation. "He's brave, just like you." She looked up at him. "You think I'm brave?" "I know you are." That evening, as he walked back to his car, he passed a couple walking into the shelter, potential foster parents. They carried a clipboard and nervous smiles. He knew what that meant. Lara would be placed soon. And suddenly, that thought felt unbearable. Monday morning, Daniel requested a meeting with Child Protective Services. He sat across from a woman named Rachel Lang, a caseworker with years of experience and sharp eyes that softened only occasionally. "I'm not here to overstep," Daniel began, "but I'd like to know who's being considered for Lara's placement." Rachel leaned back. "She'll go into temporary foster care, and, depending on her mother's sentencing, we'll look into longer-term arrangements. She may be eligible for adoption down the line." "What about me?" he asked. She raised an eyebrow. "You? I want to be considered." A long pause followed. "Officer Brooks, with all due respect, you've known this child for less than a week." "I understand. But I've been with her every day since the night of the arrest. I've seen her more than anyone else in months, maybe even years. She trusts." Rachel folded her hands. "And this trust, are you prepared for what it means? Because it doesn't end when she learns to sleep through the night without fear. It doesn't end when she calls you Dad, or when she asks questions you don't have answers to. You can't just be a good guy with a badge. You have to be her world." "I know," he said softly. "And I want to try." She exhaled slowly. "It's not that simple. We'll have to run background checks, psychological evaluations, home inspections. There's paperwork, court proceedings, months of review. I'm not asking for shortcuts," he said. "I just want the chance." Rachel didn't answer right away. She opened her folder, scribbled something on a sticky note, then closed it. "You'll have to go through the full application process. You'll be under scrutiny like any other applicant, possibly more." "I expect that." "Then start here." She slid the note across the desk. That night, Daniel sat in his apartment staring at the stack of forms. He hadn't imagined himself in this place. After losing his wife and daughter, he'd accepted a quiet, solitary existence. He buried himself in work. He volunteered for extra shifts. He took care of his mother. He helped neighbors move furniture and mowed lawns for elderly veterans. He did good, honorable things, but never let anyone get close again. Until Lara. There was something about the way she looked at him, not with admiration, but with safety. She saw something in him he hadn't seen in himself for years, a protector, not just in uniform, but in spirit. He started filling out the forms. It felt like something was unlocking inside him. Days turned into weeks. Lara was still at the shelter, awaiting placement. The foster home she had been assigned to withdrew due to a family emergency. The delay bought Daniel time, not that he admitted he was grateful for it. Meanwhile, he prepared. He cleaned out his spare room, painted the walls sky blue, and set up a small bed with dinosaur sheets. He installed a bookshelf and stocked it with stories about heroes and brave kids. He even bought a nightlight that glowed stars on the ceiling. It wasn't just a room. It was a promise. One morning, Laura asked him, "Do you have a family?"
Daniel hesitated.
"I used to." She didn't press, but that night, as he walked her back inside, she slipped her small hand into his. It only lasted a moment, but it was enough. Then came the day that would change everything. Rachel called Daniel on his day off. "We need to talk." He drove to the CPS office, heart pounding. Rachel greeted him with an unreadable expression. We had a development. Isabel Monroe has agreed to testify in exchange for a lighter sentence, but there's a condition. Daniel's jaw tightened. What kind of condition? She wants to speak to you. He blinked. Me? Why? She says it's about Laura. Daniel sat down. When? Tomorrow. At the Federal Detention Center. That night he barely slept. What could Isabel possibly want with him? A deal? A threat? A confession? And what could she possibly say that would change the way he already felt? Laura wasn't just a kid he found on duty. She was the reason he remembered how to feel again. But something told him that whatever Isabel had to say, whatever secrets she'd kept all these years, were about to change everything. And Daniel wasn't sure he was ready for the truth. Not yet, but ready or not, he would face it. For Laura. Because this wasn't about doing the right thing anymore, it was about doing the real thing. No more distance, no more detachment, no more hiding behind a badge or the past. The next morning would bring answers, or maybe more questions, but Daniel knew one thing for certain. He was in this for real, for good, and for her. The drive to the Federal Detention Center was quiet. Daniel gripped the steering wheel a little tighter than usual, his mind looping with scenarios. What would Isabel Monroe say? Why had she insisted on speaking to him? And why now, after weeks of silence? The sky was gray, smeared with low clouds that hung heavy over the highway. Rain threatened to return, just like it had the day he found Laura. Something about that symmetry unnerved him. When he arrived at the prison, the process was clinical. Sign in, metal detector, escort through narrow halls lined with cold industrial lighting. The walls, thick and expressionless, absorbed every sound except the quiet hum of the overhead lights. Finally, a guard opened a door to a small interview room. A metal table sat between two chairs bolted to the floor. A pane of glass separated the room from the observation area. Isabel Monroe was already seated, her hands cuffed, her face unreadable. She didn't look like the photos from her arrest, disheveled, defiant. Today she looked composed. Her dark hair was tied back and she wore no makeup. She looked tired, not physically, emotionally, like someone who had lost her fight. "Officer Brooks," she said, her voice calm, almost polite. "Thanks for coming." Daniel didn't respond right away. He took the seat across from her and met her eyes. "You wanted to talk about Laura?"
Yes.
"Why me?" Isabel leaned forward slightly. "Because you were there. You found her. And she trusts you." He studied her face, trying to see past the facade. "If you care about her, why hide her from the world? Why make her live like a ghost?" Her jaw tensed, but she didn't flinch. "Because I had no choice. And before you judge me, you need to hear everything." Daniel didn't interrupt. "She's not my daughter by blood," Isabel said finally. "She's my sister's child."
Daniel blinked. What?
"My twin sister, Madison, she got into some bad things. Drugs, gangs. She was with a man who abused her, and Laura was born in the middle of all that. When Laura was 2, Madison overdosed. The man disappeared. I couldn't let the system take her. I knew what that life did to people, so I ran, took Laura, and vanished." Daniel sat in stunned silence. The pieces shifted in his mind, some fitting together for the first time. "She doesn't know," Isabel continued. "She thinks I'm her mom. I never told her the truth. I didn't think she was ready." Daniel cleared his throat. "And the fraud? The millions you stole?" Their expression hardened. "That was for Laura, too. I justified it. At first. Said it was to build her a future. But it turned into something else. I started lying to myself. And by the time I wanted out, it was too late. People were watching. People who don't forgive." Daniel leaned in. "So this wasn't just about greed. Isabel's voice cracked. I wanted her to have a life I couldn't give in the shadows, but I kept digging a hole I couldn't climb out of. Silence stretched between them. She deserves better, Isabel said. And if she's bonded with you, if you're who she feels safe with, then I want you to fight for her. Daniel's stomach tightened. Why now? Why not tell the truth in court? I will, but I needed to know she'd land somewhere safe. Somewhere human. I've seen the system chew up kids, foster homes that look fine on paper, but they don't see her. You do. He nodded slowly. She's not just another case. I know. There was a pause. She still thinks you're coming back, Daniel said. But this is temporary. Isabel blinked rapidly. Tell her I had to go away, but that she's not alone. Not anymore. Daniel stood, the weight of everything settling into his shoulders. I'll take care of her. I believe you. As he left the room, he could feel Isabel's eyes on his back. There were no cameras in the hallway, but the burden of her confession followed him all the way out. Back in his apartment that night, Daniel sat in silence. The truth changed everything, and nothing at the same time. Lara's identity wasn't what they thought, but her trauma was still real. Her fear, her detachment, her craving for safety, they were all rooted in a story more complicated than anyone had guessed. He stared at her case file, wondering if he should tell her the truth. Not now, but someday. The adoption process had officially begun. Rachel had approved his application to proceed with home visits pending final background clearances. He had passed the psychological review and was waiting on final court dates. But Isabel's testimony would help a lot. Her admission of Lara's true parentage, combined with her willingness to surrender guardianship, could fast-track the proceedings. Still, Daniel couldn't shake the thought. How much had Lara absorbed? Did she know more than she let on? The next day, he brought her a new pair of sneakers. Her old ones had holes in the soles, and one had a piece of duct tape on the side. She lit up when she saw the box. You got me shoes? Yeah, you've been walking like you're stepping on lava. She giggled. It was the first time he'd heard her laugh like that. He helped her try them on. They feel like clouds, she said, hopping once. You like them? I love them. Good, he said, because we've got somewhere to go this weekend. Where? It's a surprise, but you'll need those shoes. Saturday came, and Daniel took her to the Oregon Zoo. It wasn't grand or flashy, but it was the kind of place kids remembered for years. She held his hand the entire time. They saw bears, seals, a giraffe, and a very sleepy lion. At lunch, she asked quietly, "Are you my dad now?" Daniel paused, setting down his sandwich. "I'm not yet, but I'm trying to be. I want to be." She nodded, biting her lip. Okay. Later, as they walked past the elephants, she squeezed his hand. "You don't have to be my real dad. You're my Daniel. That's enough." He blinked away, the sudden moisture in his eyes. But in that moment, he knew she didn't just want a guardian. She wanted him. On Monday, Daniel received the call. Rachel's voice was firm, but excited. "We have a court date." Isabel submitted her affidavit, and the judge is fast-tracking Lara's placement hearing. It'll be reviewed next Thursday. You'll be present. Daniel stood motionless in his kitchen, keys still in hand from just arriving home. Next Thursday. Yes. Be ready. It's the last big step. He thanked her and hung up. It was happening. The room around him blurred slightly. His apartment, once silent and sterile, had slowly filled with signs of a child, crayons, small shoes by the door, a pink backpack with stickers on the strap. And now it was about to become her home, for real. That night he sat by her bed as she looked at the glowing stars on the ceiling. "Can we leave them on all night?" she asked. "Of course." She turned to him. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything. If I have bad dreams, will you be there?" He nodded. Every time. She smiled. And just before closing her eyes, she whispered, I'm glad you found me.
Daniel sat in the dark room long after she fell asleep.
And in the quiet, beneath plastic stars and whispered promises, he realized something simple and profound. He hadn't just found her. She had saved him too. The week leading up to the court date passed with a strange mix of nervous energy and calm routine. Daniel had never gone through anything like this. He had been in court countless times, testifying, presenting evidence, standing by victims, but never like this, never with something so deeply personal on the line. Every day he woke up and followed the same rhythm: breakfast with Lara, school drop-off, work, paperwork, home visits, dinner, bedtime stories. She had settled into his life so naturally that it was hard to imagine the apartment without her now. She had favorite spots: her corner of the couch with the purple blanket, the kitchen stool she always dragged over to help him cook scrambled eggs, the bathroom mirror where she liked to leave sticky notes with smiley faces. His life had transformed from quiet and colorless to something that felt alive. But underneath it all, Daniel knew the hearing would be a turning point. One night, while tucking her in, she asked, "Is tomorrow the day?" "Not yet," he smiled. "A few more days." She nodded, but didn't smile back. "Do I have to go to court?" "No, you'll stay with Miss Rachel for a little while." "Will the judge be nice?" Daniel paused. "I hope so. But no matter what, I'll be there for you, okay?" She nodded again. "Okay, but what if they say no?" He gently brushed her hair from her forehead. "Then I'll keep trying. I won't stop." That answer seemed to satisfy her. She closed her eyes and drifted to sleep. But Daniel stayed a little longer, staring at the small rise and fall of her chest, knowing that everything he loved was now in someone else's hands. On the morning of the hearing, Daniel wore his cleanest dress shirt and a blazer that still smelled faintly of cedar from his closet. He reviewed his statement over coffee, pacing the living room while Lara played with Juno, her stuffed husky. Rachel picked her up just before 8 a.m. Lara hugged him tight at the door. "You'll tell me everything later," she asked. "Everything," he promised. "And you'll come get me?" "Of course." She nodded bravely and climbed into the CPS car. Daniel watched until they disappeared down the street. Then he exhaled and drove to the courthouse. The courtroom wasn't as imposing as Daniel expected. It was quiet, sun streaming through tall windows, the sound of paper shuffling and low murmurs filling the air. Rachel was already there, seated at the side bench with her files neatly arranged. She smiled when she saw him. "You ready?" "As I'll ever be." The judge, a stern but not unkind woman named Harriet Morrison, entered promptly. She was known for being fair, but strict with protocol. Daniel stood when called, and so did Rachel. The hearing began. Rachel spoke first, summarizing the case: Lara's discovery, Isabel's arrest, the absence of family, Isabel's affidavit, and Daniel's role in Lara's life since the incident. She referenced every home visit, psychological evaluation, and agency report. She detailed Lara's behavioral improvements since being placed under Daniel's informal care. Then it was Daniel's turn. He stood, cleared his throat, and faced the judge. "Your Honor, I'm not here as a police officer today. I'm here as a man who found something he never expected. Hopeful, Lara came into my life through circumstances none of us would choose. She had every reason to be afraid of the world, of people, of me. But she wasn't. She trusted me, and that trust changed me. I lost my family years ago. My wife and daughter died in a car crash. Since then, I've done everything I could to serve others, but I closed myself off from having anything real again. Lara opened that door. I see her strength, her kindness, her laughter, and I see the future, a future where she can be safe, loved, and truly seen. I know adoption is a big decision. I know it's not just about affection, it's about commitment, sacrifice, and consistency. I'm ready for that. I want to give Lara not just a house, but a home, not just structure, but connection. I'm not trying to replace anyone in her past. I'm here to stand beside her in the future. He paused, voice tight. I believe I was meant to find her, and I'll never walk away. The courtroom was silent. Even the judge seemed momentarily moved. She cleared her throat and adjusted her glasses. I've reviewed all documentation. Mr. Brooks, your history as an officer is commendable. Your evaluations were consistent. The child's response to your care is undeniable. But adoption is a lifelong decision. Are you prepared to legally and emotionally commit to this child fully and unconditionally? Yes, Your Honor, Daniel said, his voice steady. I am. She nodded. I will deliberate briefly and return with my ruling. She exited the courtroom. Rachel leaned toward Daniel. That went very well. He nodded but didn't exhale yet. Minutes passed like hours. Finally, the judge returned. Everyone rose. As she sat and read through her final statement, then looked up at Daniel. It is the court's decision that Officer Daniel Brooks is hereby granted legal guardianship of Laura Madison Monroe, with full rights to adopt and parent her in accordance with Oregon state law. Custody is effective immediately. The words hit like a wave. Daniel blinked, barely believing it. It was done. He was her father. Rachel hugged him in the hallway. You did it. No, he said. We did it. I'll call to bring her over right away. She'll want to hear it from you. 30 minutes later, Rachel's car pulled up in front of the station. Laura stepped out, clutching Juno. She spotted Daniel and froze. He walked toward her, kneeling to her level. It's official, he said. You're coming home. Her eyes widened. Really? He nodded. Forever? He smiled. Forever. She leapt into his arms, wrapping herself around him like she never wanted to let go. And he held her tighter than he ever had. That evening they made pancakes for dinner. She wore one of his t-shirts tied up with a pink hairband at the waist, dancing around the kitchen while he flipped the batter. She set the table with mismatched plates and spilled syrup on the floor. Oops. He laughed. Looks like I'm going to need a mop. Don't worry, she grinned. I'm great at cleanup. Later they sat on the couch watching cartoons, her head on his chest, her feet curled beneath a blanket. At one point she looked up at him. Can we get a real dog someday? We'll talk about it. Juno says yes. Well then, he said, smiling. I guess I'm outnumbered. That night he tucked her in and sat beside her. She reached for his hand. Hey, Dad. The word hit him like lightning. Yes, thank you for choosing me. He swallowed hard. Thank you for letting me. She closed her eyes. And in that small room, under the soft hum of the nightlight, the world finally felt right. She reached for his hand. Hey, Dad? The word hit him like lightning. Yes? Thank you for choosing me. He swallowed hard. Thank you for letting me. She closed her eyes. And in that small room, under the soft hum of the nightlight, the world finally felt right. A quiet warmth settled over him as he sat there in the dark watching over her. The apartment no longer felt like a space filled with memories and silence. It felt like home, real, living, messy, beautiful home. Outside, the wind picked up, brushing gently against the windows. Tomorrow there would be new routines, new laughter, maybe new struggles too. But tonight there was peace, and in Daniel's heart, a quiet, steady certainty. He wasn't just saving a life. He was living one again. The first morning as a legal father felt different. Not because of anything dramatic. There was no banner hanging across the kitchen, no confetti, but because of the small things. The way Lara called out Dad from the hallway when she couldn't find her socks. The way she sat at the table with her cereal and smiled like she belonged. Because now she did. Daniel felt it in the way his apartment breathed, no longer a quiet space filled with framed certificates and old memories. It now pulsed with life. The fridge had magnets, the living room floor had toys, and the hallway echoed with the soft patter of small feet. And yet, he knew this was just the beginning. Their new life settled into routines quickly. Mornings became a blur of ponytails, cartoon music, lunchboxes, and forgotten homework. Afternoons brought snacks, backpacks dropped mid-step, and chatter about what happened at school. Lara was thriving, at least on the surface. She made friends. Her teacher emailed to say she was creative and polite. He drew a picture of Daniel as a superhero during art class and gave it to him, beaming. But Daniel wasn't new to reading between the lines. Sometimes she'd flinch when someone rang the doorbell. Sometimes she'd double-check the locks before bed, even though he'd already done it. And once, when he raised his voice, just a little reacting to a stubbed toe, she went quiet for the rest of the night. He didn't press. Instead, he waited. Because trauma doesn't work on a schedule. And healing, he was learning, wasn't about fixing, it was about staying. One evening, after dinner, they sat on the couch. She was curled up in her favorite spot with Juno under one arm. "Dad?" she asked. "Yeah? Did my other mom love me?" The question hit him like a jolt. Not because he didn't expect it, but because it came without warning, without preamble. He took a slow breath. "I think she did. I think she just didn't know how to show it the way you needed." Laura looked down. She said, "We had to hide. That people would take me away." Daniel nodded. She was scared. And when people are scared, sometimes they make choices that don't make sense. "Did she go to jail because of me?" He sat up, turning to face her. "No. What happened to her had nothing to do with you. That's really important, Lara. You didn't do anything wrong." She blinked, fighting back something. "Oh, I miss her sometimes, but I don't know why I'm happy here." "That makes sense," he said gently. "It's okay to miss someone and still be happy somewhere else. Feelings can be big and mixed up. That's normal." She leaned her head against his chest. "Okay." They sat like that for a long time. No more questions, just quiet understanding. The seasons changed. Leaves turned gold and crimson. Halloween decorations appeared on lawns. Lara wanted to be a pirate, and Daniel, after much convincing, agreed to be a parrot. They walked the neighborhood together, collecting candy and laughing so hard his sides ached. She told everyone he was her dad for real, and Daniel noticed how no one questioned it. It had become a simple fact. Then came Thanksgiving. It was the first one Daniel had celebrated in years. He cooked too much food, burned the rolls, and forgot to buy cranberry sauce. But Lara said it was perfect. They ate on the couch while watching the parade rerun on TV. Between bites of mashed potatoes, she said, "Can we have Christmas lights this year?" "Sure." "Like a lot?" He smiled. "The neighbors are going to hate us." "Good," she grinned. "Let's go big." But not everything was easy. Some nights she had bad dreams. Daniel would find her standing silently in the hallway, eyes wide. Once she had a full-blown panic attack after a fire drill at school. The counselor said it was normal. That trauma doesn't vanish with adoption papers. That healing takes time. Daniel listened, took notes, joined a support group for single adoptive parents. He started reading books about childhood trauma, listening to podcasts, reaching out to other adoptive fathers. Still, there were moments he felt lost. Like the time she cried for an hour and wouldn't say why. Or when she asked if he would change his mind someday. He told her every time, "I'm not going anywhere." And every time, she asked a little less. She started drawing again. This time, pictures of their home, of Max the dog, of Daniel in a silly apron flipping pancakes. The colors were brighter, the lines less shaky. It was small, but it was healing. Then, one rainy afternoon, a letter arrived. It was from Isabel Monroe. Daniel opened it carefully, away from Laura. The handwriting was neat, the message brief. "Daniel, I know I have no right to ask for anything, but when she's old enough, If she wants to know more about her mom, her past, please let her. I'm not asking you to speak kindly of me, just truthfully. I hope she's happy. I hope you are too. Isabel. He folded it and put it in a drawer. Not today. But maybe someday. That weekend, they visited a shelter event. Dogs available for adoption. Lara had talked about it for weeks. Daniel had hesitated. Was she ready for the responsibility? Was he? But when they arrived and she crouched beside a gentle golden retriever named Max, something clicked. Can I pet him? She asked. The volunteer nodded. Max wagged his tail and leaned into her touch. He's like me, she said softly. Daniel knelt beside her. How so? He waited a long time for someone, but he's still nice. Daniel looked into Max's eyes, kind, patient, loyal. He smiled. Let's bring him home. That night, Max slept at the foot of Lara's bed. She whispered secrets to him under her blanket, and Daniel stood in the hallway, listening to the muffled giggles and tail thumps. She made a list of names for Max's future toys. She insisted on feeding him every morning, brushing him every evening. Daniel watched the two of them become a pair. One girl and dog, both rescued in different ways. He remembered once thinking his life was over. That grief would always be his shadow. But now here he was, with socks on the floor, dog hair on the couch, school drawings on the fridge, and a little girl who called him Dad without hesitation. It wasn't perfect. It was better. It was real. He remembered once thinking his life was over. That grief would always be his shadow. But now here he was with socks on the floor, dog hair on the couch, school drawings on the fridge, and a little girl who called him Dad without hesitation. It wasn't perfect. It was better. It was real. One Sunday morning, as they prepared pancakes together, Lara looked up from cracking an egg. Dad! Yeah? Do you think Max had a name before? Daniel tilted his head. He might have. Why do you ask? I was just thinking, maybe someone called him something before he came to us. But now he's Max. Like a new beginning.
Daniel smiled. Kind of like us, huh?
She nodded. Yeah, a new beginning. They finished breakfast and ate on the balcony, the morning sun pouring in across their plates. Lara talked about school, her plans to build a doghouse out of cardboard, and the book she was reading in class. Daniel mostly listened, smiling and taking mental snapshots of each word, each expression. These were the days he never thought he'd live again, ordinary and golden. He didn't know what challenges still waited ahead. But he knew, without question, he wasn't alone anymore. And neither was she. By mid-January, the apartment had settled into a new kind of rhythm. The Christmas lights were finally taken down at Lara's reluctant insistence that even the brightest trees need a break. School had resumed, and so had early mornings, lunchbox packing, and the daily debate about whether Max should ride in the back seat or the passenger floorboard on the way to drop off. Life was full, stable, normal, and that, perhaps, was what frightened Daniel the most. He'd been a cop long enough to know that stillness was often the space just before the storm. One Thursday evening, as Daniel was finishing the dishes and Lara was feeding Max in the corner, his phone buzzed. It was, Rachel. He picked up immediately. Hey, everything all right? Nothing urgent, she said, but I need to give you a heads up. Isabel's sentencing hearing is next month. Daniel dried his hands slowly. Is she fighting it? No, Rachel replied. She accepted a reduced sentence in exchange for full cooperation. No parole for 8 years minimum. He didn't say anything. There's more, Rachel added after a beat. Isabel's defense filed a formal request to record a video message for Lara, one-time view. She said she won't ask for contact, just wants to explain herself to Lara, not the court. Daniel's mind raced. Legally? It's up to you, Rachel said. You're the legal guardian. The court gave you full discretion. He turned toward the kitchen, watching Lara crouch and giggle as Max licked her cheek. I'll think about it. I figured you would. After he hung up, he stood there a long while. Would it help Lara to hear her biological aunt's voice again? Or would it dig open things that were finally beginning to heal? He didn't bring it up that night. Some answers didn't come fast. That weekend they visited a bookstore, a small local shop with a children's corner filled with bean bags and a sleepy cat named Momo, who according to Lara was the real manager of the store. She picked out a chapter book about a girl and her pet wolf. Daniel picked out a crime thriller he probably wouldn't read. On the way home she asked, "Did you ever arrest someone who was innocent?" He looked at her, surprised. "Why do you ask?" "I was just thinking about people who do bad things but maybe didn't mean to." He nodded slowly. "It happens. Sometimes people are in bad situations, sometimes they make bad choices for what they think are good reasons."
Like Mom.
He kept his eyes on the road.
Yeah, maybe like her.
She didn't say anything else, but her silence was louder than usual. That night after Lara fell asleep, Daniel opened the drawer where he'd placed Isabel's letter. He read it again. Every line felt heavier now, more layered. He didn't know what was right, but he knew Lara would ask one day. And when she did, she deserved more than filtered fragments. She deserved the truth, even if it came in broken pieces. The next morning he called Rachel. "Tell the court I'll allow the message." 3 weeks later, a small flash drive arrived by registered mail. Daniel didn't open it right away. It sat on his desk for 3 days, as if the plastic casing itself carried weight. Finally, one evening when Lara had fallen asleep early, he slipped the drive into his laptop. The video opened with Isabel sitting in what looked like a plain room, likely inside the prison. No makeup, her hair tied back, her expression soft but serious. "Lara," she began, "if you're watching this, it's because the people who love you most thought you were ready to hear some things I couldn't say before, things I should have said a long time ago." Daniel listened in silence as Isabel spoke about Madison, Lara's birth mother, her struggles, her pain, her moments of joy. She spoke of taking Lara, not out of malice, but out of panic. She spoke of the years hiding, lying, and believing that she could somehow outrun consequence if it meant keeping Lara safe. "I didn't know how to be a mother. I just knew I couldn't leave you behind," she said. "And I didn't realize until it was too late that love without truth isn't enough." She didn't cry. She didn't beg. She just said, "You deserve the kind of love that lets you be seen, fully, freely, and I hope you've found that now." Daniel closed the laptop slowly. He didn't know when Lara would be ready, but now when she was, he'd have something real to give her. February brought snow, just a dusting, but enough for Lara to declare a snow emergency and insist they build a snow dog to match Max. They used 2 buttons, a carrot, and an old police cap Daniel had tucked away in storage. It was crooked and melting by the afternoon, but Lara declared it a masterpiece. Daniel laughed more that day than he had in months. But later that evening something shifted. They were watching a movie when Lara suddenly turned to him and asked, "If my real mom came back, would she take me away?" Daniel blinked. "No, she can't. And besides, you're with me. That doesn't change." "But what if I wanted to go?" His stomach clenched. "Do you?" She paused. "I don't know. I mean, sometimes I miss her, but I don't really remember her face anymore, and sometimes I feel bad for not wanting to." Daniel nodded slowly. "It's okay not to know how you feel. You don't have to decide anything right now, or ever. Missing her doesn't mean you don't love it here." She leaned into him.
"I don't want to leave," she whispered.
"Then you're not going anywhere," he said, wrapping an arm around her. They sat like that until the movie ended, and the credits rolled in silence. A few days later, Lara got a school project, an assignment to draw a family tree. Daniel found her sitting at the kitchen table, staring at a blank sheet of paper, pencil unmoving. "Need help?" he asked. She looked up. I don't know what to put. Start with you, he said, and then put me. That's all you need. But everyone else has grandparents and brothers and sisters, and he knelt beside her. Families come in all kinds of shapes. Trees grow in different directions. Yours is just starting. She smiled at that. Then she drew a tree with only 2 leaves. One was labeled me, the other Dad. And beneath it she added a small paw print. Daniel chuckled. Max approves. On a rainy Sunday, while walking through the grocery store, Laura asked something that stopped him in his tracks. Do you think you'll ever fall in love again? He nearly dropped the cereal box in his hand.
Where'd that come from?
I don't know, she shrugged. I was just thinking, maybe you could have someone too. Daniel smiled. Right now I've got everything I need. But you could. I wouldn't mind. He looked at her, surprised by how grown she sounded. We'll see, he said. One day. But for now, he thought this was enough. More than enough. Spring arrived quietly that year. The frost melted off the sidewalks, school jackets were traded for lighter hoodies, and Max began shedding fur like he was trying to coat every surface in the apartment. Laura made a game of collecting it into a Max pillow that she swore she would use for sleepovers someday. Daniel wasn't convinced, but he let her keep the bag anyway. The days had grown longer, but Daniel noticed something else stretching too, Laura's confidence. She stood a little taller when she spoke to adults. She volunteered to read aloud in class. She asked tougher questions, and yet, for all the outward growth, there were things still hidden underneath. It started with a phone call from Laura's teacher. Nothing major, Miss Peterson assured him. But I wanted to flag something. Laura's been withdrawn lately. Quieter than usual. She's still participating, but she's distant. Daniel rubbed his forehead. Did something happen? There was a writing assignment, the teacher said gently. They were asked to write about family. Most kids wrote about holidays, parents, siblings. Laura wrote about courtrooms and secrets. It wasn't graphic, just emotional. Did she mention Isabel? No names, but it was clear there's weight behind what she wrote. Daniel thanked her and hung up, the knot in his chest tightening. That evening, he waited for the right moment after dinner, after Max had been walked and fed, after Laura was already in her pajamas. He found her in her room, sitting on the rug, flipping through a notebook. Hey, Bug, he said softly, can I sit? She nodded. He sat beside her, watching as she closed the notebook slowly. I heard from Miss Peterson today. Laura didn't move. She told me you wrote something powerful. Still, no response. Daniel waited a beat. Do you want to talk about it? She looked up, her voice small. Am I weird? The question punched the air out of him. No. Why would you think that? Because other kids have normal stories. Like their mom made pancakes. Or they went to Disney. I wrote about courtrooms. He gently pulled her into his lap. What you wrote was real. That's not weird. It's brave. She sniffled. What if people don't want to be my friend because of it? Then they don't deserve to be your friend. She leaned her head on his shoulder. Sometimes I forget stuff on purpose, and then I feel bad. Daniel didn't rush his answer. Forgetting is okay, and remembering is okay too. You're not doing anything wrong. She hugged him tighter. You don't get tired of it, the hard stuff. No, he whispered. I get tired sometimes, but never of you. And in that moment, under the soft hum of her nightlight and the quiet weight of her question, he realized something profound. She wasn't just healing, she was learning how to carry her story without shame. The next week, the school announced a Heritage Day event. Kids were invited to bring food, music, photos, anything that reflected their family background. Daniel wasn't sure how Laura would take it. Her heritage, after all, wasn't a straight line. But she surprised him. Can we do a table about us? She asked. What do you mean? Like our story. Maybe a photo of us. And Max, too. He smiled. That's a great idea. Together they made a poster board with snapshots of their time together, the first pancake morning, their trip to the zoo, the crooked snow dog, Max in a Halloween costume. In big letters, Lara wrote, "Family is who stays." Daniel blinked back tears when he read it. At the event, other parents stopped to read it. Some smiled, some nodded, some asked questions. One father pointed to the phrase and said, "That's really good." Lara beamed. "Thanks, I made it." Later, as they packed up, she said, "Today was fun and not scary." Daniel ruffled her hair. "You were amazing. I felt proud," she said. "Like, really proud. You should." She paused. "I think maybe I like our weird story." He laughed. "It's not weird, it's one of a kind." But just when things seemed to settle again, another storm approached, this time from Daniel's side of life. It came in the form of a manila envelope left at the precinct internal affairs. An old use of force case from years ago was being reopened. A suspect had filed a civil lawsuit, and Daniel was named as one of the officers present during a chaotic arrest. He wasn't worried about guilt. He'd followed protocol, and body cam footage supported it, but he was worried about what it would mean for Lara. He didn't want her to hear about police investigations and think it meant the people she trusted were unsafe. That night, after she fell asleep, he sat on the couch staring at the letter. Rachel called after reading the case summary. "This isn't about your parenting," she said, "and it won't impact custody. But if the press gets hold of it, they might spin it." "I know," he said. "You okay?"
I'm just tired.
She was quiet for a moment. "Let me know if you need help handling media or explaining anything." "Thanks."
He hung up and leaned back, Max placing his chin on Daniel's foot.
Just when he thought the past had quieted, it found a way to knock again. 2 weeks later, after Daniel gave a deposition and the review board cleared him, the precinct issued a quiet statement of support. The press didn't latch on. The air cleared. But Daniel noticed something had changed in Lara. She was watching him more closely, listening in when he took phone calls, asking, "Was that about work?" more often. Finally, one evening she said, "Are people mad at you?" He sat down beside her. "No, everything's okay now." She looked at him hard, then said, "Did you do something bad?" "No. But sometimes even when you do your best, people still have questions. That's fair." She nodded slowly. "Okay. I just didn't want people thinking you were like the kind of police that hurts people." He swallowed. "I know what you mean," he said, "and I try very hard not to be." She leaned into him. "I know you're not." They didn't talk about it again. But from then on she wore his old police badge, one he'd retired after promotion, on her backpack. Like a quiet statement, "I know who he is." Later that spring, they visited Daniel's parents' grave. He hadn't gone in years, but he wanted Lara to know. He brought flowers. Lara brought a drawing. "This is me," she said, placing it on the stone. "And this is Max. And this is you, with pancakes." Daniel laughed gently. "I think they would have loved you," he said. "I hope so. They'd be proud of us." She smiled. "I think I'm proud of us, too." That night, back at home, Daniel tucked her in as usual. She reached out and caught his hand before he turned off the light. "Dad?" "Yeah?" "I don't think I'm scared anymore. Not like before." He sat on the edge of her bed. "I'm really glad to hear that. It feels like my bones remember, but my heart is new." He looked at her, really looked, and saw not just a child who had endured, but a child who was learning to thrive. "You're pretty amazing," he said. She grinned. "I know." And with that, she closed her eyes and fell asleep. Daniel sat beside her a while longer. Grateful, steady, home. By August, the rhythm of summer had settled into something quiet and steady. The lemonade stand was replaced by sidewalk chalk mosaics and early evening walks with Max, whose tale had become a neighborhood landmark. Lara had finished her story and handed in the final copy for a school newsletter that would publish it in the fall. It was titled Simply Found. Daniel read it more times than he'd admit. Each sentence felt like a breath she'd been holding for years. Finally let go. One evening, while reorganizing the hall closet, he stumbled upon a box labeled Emily. It was filled with old photos, birthday cards, and a hospital wristband from years ago. He hadn't opened it since the accident. He sat on the floor, surrounded by stillness, and slowly lifted out a picture of his late daughter, blonde hair, gap-toothed smile, cheeks smudged with cake. Emily had only lived to be 6. Same as Lara when he met her. That realization hit harder than he expected. Not as a comparison, but as a reminder, life somehow had circled back, not to replace, but to restore. He took the photo, framed it, and placed it next to Lara's on the living room shelf. She noticed it the next morning. "Who's that?" she asked. Daniel hesitated, then smiled softly. "That's Emily, my daughter. She would have been your age." Lara looked at the photo, then back at him. "She looks nice." She was. "Do you miss her?" "Every day." Lara reached out, touched the frame, and said quietly, "Should like Max." Daniel laughed through the ache. "Yeah, I think she would." Later that week, they visited a summer fair on the outskirts of town. There were food trucks, music, a Ferris wheel. Lara dragged Daniel from booth to booth, challenging him to ring-toss balloon darts and an absurdly high climbing wall he refused to even approach. At one tent, a caricature artist offered to draw portraits for $5. "Do us," Lara insisted. They sat for 10 minutes while the artist sketched and Max napped under the bench. When the drawing was revealed, it showed Daniel in a detective trench coat, Lara riding Max like a horse, both of them laughing. Lara giggled uncontrollably. "I'm putting that on my bedroom door." Daniel just shook his head. "You're going to scare away the tooth fairy." That night, Daniel received a message on his personal email from a name he didn't recognize, Angela Monroe. At first, he almost deleted it. But curiosity won. "Mr. Brooks, my name is Angela Monroe. I'm Isabel's younger cousin. We were not close growing up, but I've followed the case quietly. I recently found out about Lara. I live in Idaho with my husband and son. I have no legal claim, and I'm not here to disrupt anything. I just wanted to reach out. If Lara ever wants to know more about her birth family, who her mother was before everything, I'd be willing to talk. Again, only if you or she ever feel it's right. Angela." Daniel sat with the message for a long time. He hadn't anticipated the ripple effects of Lara's story reaching further than their small world. He called Rachel the next day. "She has no legal footing," Rachel assured. "But if she's sincere, this could be a resource, or a risk. Your call." He didn't mention it to Lara. Not yet. As school approached, they shopped for supplies. Folders, notebooks, colored pencils, a new backpack with patches. Lara insisted on sewing herself. One evening, while writing her name on a lunchbox label, she paused. "Should I write Lara Monroe or Lara Brooks?" Daniel looked up from folding laundry. "Whichever feels right to you." She thought for a moment, then wrote, "Lara M. Brooks." "I like both," she said. And Daniel understood. Her identity wasn't a straight line. It was a mosaic. On the first day of school, Daniel made pancakes in the shape of stars. Lara wore a denim jacket and 2 mismatched socks for good luck. They walked to the bus stop, hand in hand. As the bus pulled up, she turned to him and said, "Don't cry." He smirked. "I wasn't going to." "You always cry." "I do not." She grinned. "See you at 3, Detective Dad." The doors closed, and the bus pulled away. And yes, Daniel cried. A little. That afternoon, while Laura was at school, Daniel finally responded to Angela. Angela, thank you for your kind message. Laura's doing well. She's bright, creative, and stronger than I think. Even she realizes. I appreciate your respectful tone and the care behind your words. I'm not sure when or if Laura will want to explore that part of her story, but when the time comes, I'll let her decide. Best. The Daniel Brooks? He hit send and leaned back, watching the cursor blink on the screen like a heartbeat. The past, it seemed, never truly left, but maybe it could be softened, framed, handled gently when the time came. That weekend, they hosted a backyard picnic for some of Laura's new classmates and their parents. Max played referee while the kids ran through a sprinkler. Daniel grilled hot dogs, took far too many blurry photos, and got roped into an impromptu water balloon war. Later, as the kids ate popsicles on towels and the sun dipped low, one parent approached Daniel. "Your daughter's amazing," she said. She mentioned being adopted, said it like it was the most normal thing in the world. Daniel smiled. "To her it is." The woman nodded. "You're doing something right." After everyone left, Laura flopped onto the couch with Max curled at her feet. That was awesome. Daniel tossed her a towel. "You hit me in the face with a water balloon. You needed cooling down." He sat beside her. "I'm proud of you." She leaned against him. "I'm proud of you, too." Later that night, while cleaning up the yard, Daniel found one of Laura's name tags left behind, written in permanent marker, on the edge of a paper plate, Laura M. Brooks. He smiled. He didn't know what the future held. There would be more questions, more growing pains, more memories to make and hard truths to unpack. But for now, in this chapter, they were okay. Maybe even better than okay. They were a family. One forged by choice, bound by love, and grounded in the kind of trust that only grows when two people decide over and over again to stay. They were a family. One forged by choice, bound by love, and grounded in the kind of trust that only grows when two people decide over and over again to stay. A few nights later, as Daniel folded laundry and Laura brushed her teeth, she called from the bathroom, "Hey, Dad, what's your favorite memory?" He paused mid-fold. "That's a big question. Of all time." "No, just your favorite since we became a family." Daniel sat down on the edge of her bed and thought, "Maybe the night you fell asleep on the couch after telling me Max was actually an alien sent from Dog Planet to observe humans." She laughed. That was a good one. "What about you?" She dried her face with a towel, then climbed into bed. "The time we went to the beach, and it rained, but we stayed anyway. Remember, we just sat under the umbrella and ate soggy chips."
I do remember. You said it was the best, worst beach day ever.
"Still is," she said proudly. Moments like that, simple, spontaneous, imperfect, had come to define their family. Not the courtroom papers or the official name change, but shared jokes, inside stories, and the slow, daily layering of memories. A few days later, Daniel received a call from Isabel's lawyer. "Mr. Brooks, Isabel asked me to pass along one final message. She's begun a writing program for inmates and would like to donate the story rights of her experience if Laura ever chooses to publish her version in the future." Daniel was silent. She said, "It's not about image or redemption, just permission." She thought Laura might want full authorship, legally and creatively. He didn't respond right away. "Tell her thank you," he said. After the call, Daniel sat with the idea. Laura's story was hers. But so many pieces of it came from people she barely knew, people who'd made painful choices. If she ever wanted to reclaim the narrative on her terms, this gesture, strange as it was, could matter. He saved the paperwork in a secure folder labeled Laura for later, and then he went to cook dinner. That weekend, they volunteered at an animal shelter. It had been Laura's idea. I think Max needs to meet other dogs, she said. Daniel chuckled. Are you saying he's lonely? Maybe a little. Also, I just want to play with puppies. Fair enough. They spent the afternoon cleaning bowls, folding blankets, and walking overly excited dogs. One golden retriever pup tried to climb Daniel like a tree while Lara doubled over laughing. His name is Moose, she shouted. I believe it. As they left, the shelter manager handed them a thank you card. Lara opened it in the car. Inside was a handwritten note. Kindness multiplies. Thank you for giving love where it's needed. Lara smiled. I want to come back. We will? That night, Daniel watched her sleep. Max curled up by her feet, her arms wrapped around her stuffed fox. She looked peaceful, and for the first time in a long time, Daniel felt peaceful, too. Not just proud, not just responsible, but genuinely at ease. Because no matter how the world turned, how the past lingered, or how complicated life could get, he knew they had built something real, and real, he had learned, was more than enough. Autumn came back around like a familiar song. The leaves turned from green to fire. The evenings grew cooler, and the rhythm of school, homework, and cozy routines returned. Lara had entered the 4th grade with a sense of calm confidence Daniel hadn't seen the year before. She walked taller now, smiled more, asked deeper questions. Their home reflected that growth too. The fridge was covered in drawings, spelling test stickers, and a laminated class schedule with doodles in the corners. The hallway had a new corkboard filled with silly photos and clippings. Max in sunglasses, Daniel holding a burnt grilled cheese, Lara with a medal from the school's fun run. It looked like a regular home. And to Daniel, that was the most extraordinary thing of all. One crisp Saturday morning, Lara sat on the back steps with a spiral notebook, scribbling furiously. Max lay beside her, his nose twitching at the breeze. Daniel stepped outside with 2 mugs of hot cocoa, one with marshmallows, one without. He handed her the one with extra. What are you working on? He asked. A sequel, she said. To your story.
Yup, this one's about what happens after the happily ever after.
He took a sip. That sounds important. It is, she said, tapping her pencil. I think people forget that stories keep going even after the big moments. He smiled. They do. Like, I got adopted, and we became a family. That's huge. But then there's learning how to live together, figuring out stuff, trusting, forgiving. That's still part of the story. He looked at her heart full. You're exactly right. She grinned. I'm calling it Still Us. He nodded slowly. Perfect title. That week, Daniel was invited to speak at a local middle school for Community Heroes Week. Normally, he avoided attention, but Lara insisted, you're the perfect person for it. What makes you say that? Because you didn't save me once. You keep showing up. He gave in. On the day of the event, he stood in front of a crowd of teenagers, unsure how to compress a lifetime into 10 minutes. I've been a police officer for over 15 years. He began. I've seen danger, loss, and the worst of what people can do. But I've also seen hope. I've seen second chances, and I've learned that bravery isn't just about facing violence or running into danger. It's about loving people, especially when it's hard. It's about choosing to stay. After the speech, a boy approached him quietly and said, My uncle adopted me. I never really thought of him as a hero before, but I think maybe he is. Daniel smiled. Sounds like he is. When he got home, Lara was waiting at the door. Did they like it? She asked. I think so. She handed him a drawing. It was of Daniel, Lara, and Max, with a banner above their heads, My Forever Heroes. He framed it that night. One Sunday evening, they received an unexpected visitor. Angela Monroe. She'd emailed weeks earlier, asking if she could meet. No pressure, no expectations. Daniel had left the decision to Lara. After thinking it over for a few days, she said she was ready. Angela arrived carrying a small canvas bag and looking nervous, but kind. She didn't overwhelm Lara with hugs or questions. She simply sat on the edge of the couch, smiling softly, letting Lara lead. They spoke for nearly 2 hours. Angela shared stories about Madison, funny ones, gentle ones. How she used to dance barefoot in the kitchen. How she once tried to build a treehouse from shoe boxes. How she loved spicy food and hated onions. Lara asked questions. Careful, curious, brave. Daniel stayed nearby, letting the space breathe. Before leaving, Angela handed Lara the canvas bag. It's just a few things. Pictures, a scarf, some letters. Madison wrote in high school, "You don't have to look now, or ever." Lara peeked inside and nodded. "Thank you." Angela gave Daniel a quiet nod before stepping out into the night. After she left, Lara sat in silence, holding the bag on her lap. "I'm glad I met her," she said finally.
I'm proud of you, Daniel replied.
She didn't make it weird. No, she didn't. "Do you think Mom would have liked me?" Daniel wrapped an arm around her. "She would have loved you." Lara rested her head on his shoulder. "I think I'm going to write about this." "I hope you do." As Halloween approached, they decorated the apartment with fake cobwebs and plastic bats. Lara wanted to be a detective this year, like you, but cooler. Daniel wore a werewolf mask and claimed it was his natural face. They trick-or-treated until their feet hurt and their candy bags overflowed. When they got home, Lara collapsed on the floor in a dramatic heap.
Being a detective is exhausting.
Daniel handed her a water bottle. "It gets easier barely." She pulled off her hat and flopped onto the couch. "Next year, I'm going as a couch." "You'd win best costume." She smiled, then looked thoughtful. "Do you ever miss before?" "Before what?" "Before me." He sat down beside her, eyes gentle. "I miss people I've lost, but I don't miss the time before you. That part of my life was important, but this part is where I came alive again." She nodded. "Me too." Thanksgiving came quickly. They cooked together, burning the rolls, forgetting the gravy, and laughing so hard, Max started howling. They invited Rachel, some neighbors, and a few of Lara's friends who didn't travel. At dinner, they went around the table and shared what they were thankful for. When it was Lara's turn, she stood, holding a piece of paper. "I'm thankful for stories, for the ones we come from and the ones we get to choose. I'm thankful for Max, for cocoa with extra marshmallows, for notebooks and pencils, for people who stay, and for this home, not just with walls, but with love." Everyone clapped. Daniel wiped his eyes, trying to play it off as gravy-related. Later that night, as they washed dishes, he whispered, "You're the best part of my story." Lara leaned her head against his side. "You're the beginning of mine." As winter arrived, they kept up their new traditions. Balcony stargazing, Sunday pancakes, game nights with ridiculous bets. Max was often the tiebreaker, and bedtime talks about things like forgiveness, friendship, and where dreams go when we wake up. Daniel started journaling again, just a little, sometimes one paragraph a night, other times just a sentence. "She fell asleep holding my badge. She asked if she can be a detective when she's older. I said she already is. She uncovers the truth in people." He didn't write to remember. He wrote because he finally could, because the quiet inside him had become a place where hope lived again. And then came the first snowfall of the season. Lara ran outside in her pajamas, arms wide, shouting, "It's happening." Max followed, barking joyfully, kicking up snow with every step. Daniel stood in the doorway watching them, his heart so full it felt like a sunrise inside his chest. This was it. Not the ending of a story, but the beginning of every day after. A life made from pieces once broken. A family born not from perfect plans, but from sacred choices. And as Lara danced under the falling snow, cheeks pink, hair wild, laughter echoing across the yard, Daniel stepped outside to join her. He didn't need to know what came next. He just needed to be here. With her, always.